Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It is my honor now to introduce our Darshani today. She is somebody who is very special in my life, Rabbi Batya Glazer, who is certainly my Rav in so many wonderful ways in the journey of life. And I'm so excited that she's going to be sharing some Torah with you today. And she is also the director of the Jewish Community Relations Council of Greater Philadelphia. So Batya, I don't see you on the screen, but I trust you're there somewhere. Okay, take it away.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. I'm going to read a little bit from the end of the Parsha this week and see if it sounds familiar. Right, those are for you, the tamei. I don't like the translation impure, so I just won't use it. Among all the swarming things, whoever touches them when they are dead shall be tamei until evening. And anything on which one of them falls when dead shall be tamei, be it any article of wood or a cloth or a skin or a sack. Any article that can be put to use shall be dipped in water, and it shall remain tamei until evening, and then it shall not be tamei anymore. If any of those falls into an earthen vessel, everything inside it shall be tamei, and the vessel itself you'll have to break. As for any food that may be eaten, it shall become tamei if it came in contact with water. As to any liquid that may be drunk, it shall become impure if it was inside any vessel. Everything, well, it goes on like that for a while. But that idea of something being tamei, it's kind of like the cooties. I mean, personally, that seems very much like the world we're living in today, right? When you come back from the grocery store, do you spray the groceries before you wash your hands, or do you wash your hands first and then spray the groceries? It feels like there must be some way to do this, but I'm never sure what it is. You leave the gloves on and then spray the groceries, but then your gloves have touched the groceries and your gloves have touched the bottle of the spray. Like, it definitely has this sense of the cooties, and I know there's a way to do this properly, but I'm not sure what it is, but I'm always trying to figure it out. And you know, you touch the doorknob of your house, so now what do I do with the doorknob of my house? And so this idea of the cooties, it feels a little bit like science in some ways. There's this sense that sense of tamei that you can catch must be like a virus. But it's actually nothing at all the same. There is absolutely no, the idea of tumah, ritual impurity, is actually nothing at all like science. I mean, it may be in our experience, but it's not really. In this parsha, we also have the laws of kashrut. They appear more than once in the Torah. And if back in chapter 11, it says, these are the creatures that you may eat from among all the land animals. Any animal that had true hooves with clefts through the hooves and chews the cud, such you may eat. The following, however, are those that chew their cud or have true hooves that you shall not eat. And then it gives a list. You'll be relieved to know I'm not going to read through all the lists of things to eat and things to not eat. But there's a long list. And people spend a lot of time on the list, right? I don't know if you've ever heard the expression pots and pantheism, or people become so obsessed with the nature of your pots and your dishes that kashrut just becomes about, you know, control of the dishes. And needing that sense of control certainly feels very familiar today. And the truth is, life is out of control most of the time, so maybe we need some of that in our lives. But it can to some degree miss the point. And for some people, it sounds like this must have something to do with our health also, right? Something like science. I know when I was in Hebrew school, you could still hear the scientism of the early 20th century in the teaching, right? Actually, pigs have trichinosis, so it's dangerous to eat them, so that's why we don't eat them, right? There are all these, you know, people will talk about how there are so many wonderful health effects to keeping kashrut, and they'll try to list them and explain why it must be the right thing to do because, well, kashrut is healthy. Well, that's also has nothing to do with anything, right? It's a conceptual framework we feel really comfortable with. Like, we understand care for our health, but it's just BS in the extreme, right? A friend of ours tells a story of, when her parents stopped keeping kosher, and they went to their lake house, and the next door neighbor happened to be a doctor, and they kept kosher. So grandma was talking to them about keeping kosher, and the doctor said, you don't have to do that anymore. So they stopped. Right? Actually, kashrut has zero to do with keeping healthy, right? It is about creating an experience, but that's not the experience you're creating. The idea of keeping kosher is about creating a spiritual space. And particularly coming off Pesach, we certainly understand the idea that kashrut is about rules and creating a reality, because, well, there are all these things you can't do. And again, from my own childhood, I remember reading peanuts aren't kosher for Passover, but you have to buy peanut oil. That didn't make any sense to me at all. Like, there are a whole long list of rules that made no sense at all, but those were the rules, so that's what you did. And they didn't need to make sense. They were the rules. But the truth is, and this is a secret, right? Almost everything is actually kosher, right? Because of all the rules, what the rules do is they create a space within the boundaries of kashrut, everything's kosher, right? Even for Pesach, right? All fruit, all vegetables are always all kosher for everyone, right? When it's not Pesach, all grains are kosher. All, any dairy, that unless it comes from an animal that's not kosher, dairy is kosher. And most things, most of the time, are kosher. And, let's assume I'm trendy and just not a nut, but when I am eating the way I strive to eat, I am a plant-based, whole foods vegan, right? This doesn't always actually happen in reality, but that's what I'm aiming for. And those rules seem perfectly normal today. Like, people eat all sorts of ways, right? There are keto diets, and there are, butter in your coffee diets, and there's the coconut oil and everything diet. There are a lot of ways that people eat. People actually love rules. They love boundaries. They love having these, like, this is what you have to do. But you will find people who have very strict ideas of what they should eat or not eat, right? The all meat people and the no meat people and the no dairy people, right? People have no trouble bounding their food, right? This is how we eat, but they still will look at kashrut as if it's something weird, right? That's not normal. Like, why do you do that? Like, that's kind of backward. That's very limiting. You'll hear people talk about kashrut as limiting, and yet they'll only eat organic vegetables, right? We actually love limits. Kashrut in a lot of ways is challenging, though, because it's setting up a spiritual space. It talks about the food you eat actually not mattering because of your health, but because of this puts you in a place of experiencing your world as a world of meaning. You'll hear people talk about the rules of kashrut actually keep us from as low down on the food chain as possible. Like, there is no carnivore, let's not count fish because they're kind of vegetables, but except for fish, there are no animals, there are no carnivorous animals that are kosher, right? Lions, tigers, birds of prey, they're just not kosher, right? We are kept to a lower level. And frankly, if you don't eat animals or animal products, there are no rules, right? All grains, all fruit, all vegetables, all kosher all the time. If there are concerns about them, it's about eating the bugs. And we're in luck because we don't want to do that anyway. But, the boundaries of kashrut actually create a space for us to live in. And that is a space that we create by choosing what we eat, where we can create a life of meaning and a relationship to the world. And during this time when we are counting the Omer, we are creating that space. And we are, as we are all quarantined and social distancing and going out only when it's essential or going out when we need to serve others, we are creating a space, whether we want to or not. That is the nature of this moment we are living in. We have to have this space. But what we do within this space is create a space of meaning. Today, actually, for the theme for the Omer, right? Every week of the Omer has a theme of a different one of the Sfirot, right? The vessels in which God contained God's self, right? God there was a tzimtzum. God contained oneself in a space to create room for creativity and life. And each week of the Omer has a theme of one of those essential building blocks of the universe. And today's theme is actually the Gvura Shel Gvura, the strength of strength. I'm going to read to you. This is actually a great book. Right? Mirrors in Time, the psycho-spiritual journey through the Jewish year. And I'm just going to read the definition here, the description of what is Gvura. Gvura is also known as yirah, awe, or fear. Gvura is associated with Isaac. It refers to strength that comes from containment, the power to contain and hold the energy of love. The partner, the balanced Gvura is chesed. It is the power of inhibition, the power of discrimination and judgment that allows one to make choices. In this time when we are in this space, we have that power. We have the power to make choices. We have a power to contain the energy of love. And in the Amidah, the second bracha of the Amidah is known as Gvura, right? We talk about God's power, God's strength. And if you read actually the way that this Siddur describes the second bracha on page 160, also, and every place this bracha comes up, right? Second bracha, God's saving care. That's not the way you usually hear Gvura translated. But when you look at what is God's strength is God's saving care. To sustain the living through kindness and love, and with great mercy give life to the dead. You support the falling, heal the sick, loosen the chains of the bound. Keep faith with those who sleep in the dust. Who is like you, Almighty? Who can be compared to you? The sovereign who brings death and life and causes redemption to flourish. This is where God's power and strength is found in our world. God is uncontainable, but God in our world creates love within this space. And as we live our lives in our quarantine, in our spaces, whatever those spaces may be, and many of us are blessed with very comfortable spaces, but it can still be hard to feel like we are stuck, right? That idea of quarantine, stuckness, separation can feel like a burden, and even when our spaces are great blessings and places of safety. But we have the power within this containment to create spaces of love and compassion. This is our opportunity to use our space to reach out to others. We are reminded of the importance of connection through our separation. Right? The next door neighbor who you might have waved at, now is the time to call your next door neighbor. Now is the time to take that effort to make this space a sacred space of compassion. This is a time to learn things you needed to learn, to connect with those we needed to connect with, and with a special blessing for those who indeed are healing the sick and leaving their safe spaces to enter dangerous spaces, to do God's work of compassion and healing. We find the ways we can to make a difference in our time of containment. And I wish for everyone the sanctity of this day of Shabbat, but also the sanctity of their personal spaces. May you all find in your containment a life of compassion and an opportunity to bring sanctity into the world. Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Yashar Kochech. Thank you very much, Batya. And indeed, may we find that bracha in the limits that we're finding ourselves in.